Maar dat is nu stilgelegd en ooit moet ik mijn stages ophalen. En dan ben ik afgestudeerd.
Hoeveel masters heb je dan?
1, hè.
En hoe heet het nu weer? In revalidatiewetenschappen?
Ja, ja.
Waarom heb je dat gekozen? Om renners te helpen revalideren als ze daar weer liggen?
Eigenlijk ja, dat lijkt mij gewoon, het was een aspect van training en dan het hangt nog dicht bij de sport aan en gewoon, dat was redelijk snel duidelijk dat ik die richting uit ging gaan. Gewoon ja, begeleiding en training en dan ja, de juiste, ja, eigenlijk het draait allemaal om de juiste training en daarom heb ik eigenlijk gekozen.
Tim, wat ben jij groot, ja?
Hey!
Dat is niet makkelijk. Als er eerst is, niet gaan.
Allez, vas-y! Grijpel! Van Summen!
Van 2 minuten 40. Isaitjev is een Rus. Didier, een Zwitser. Joer is een Est. Een Vingerling is een Nederlander. Dan zult u zeggen wie, hoe, wat. Nog eens Isaitjev, Didier, Joer en Vingerling. Weggereden, even kijken, na 20 kilometer Isaitjev en Didier. En na 26 kilometer het gezelschap gekregen van Joer en Vingerling. 2 plus 2 maakt 4. 3 minuten 55 zie ik. Dat moet zowat de maximale voorsprong geweest zijn. En dan proberen te verdedigen. Dat lukt ze niet helemaal, want na 100 kilometer was een voorsprong nog 2 minuten en 45 seconden. Dan is het af en toe eens uitkijken om niet te vallen. En dat doen ze dan toch. Hè. Brutaal, zelfs vrij vooraan. Alweer op een van die smalle wegen gaan er daar toch een stuk of 10, 15 tegen de vlakte. En gaan er een paar in de berm liggen. Misschien toch nog hopen op een zachte drop, een zachte val in de modder. Maar we zien daar Finny liggen centraal. En dat loopt dan wel niet goed af. Want Finny moet de wedstrijd verlaten. Opgave Finny, ook Dupont moet opgeven na die val. Er zijn er nog van de partij bij die val. Daar zien we met het nummer 84 Finny tegen de grond zitten. Eén van de smaakmakers in de finale van gisteren, mag je wel zeggen. Dat is dan beter dat hij in een goede periode aan de kant moet. Ook een van de mannen van Garmin komt op zijn stappen terug. Het geeft mij een wiel, dat moet Tyler Ferrer zijn, heb ik de indruk. Al lijken ze daar allemaal een beetje bij Garmin op Ferrer, behalve van Summer, die steekt er zo ver boven. Vanuit. En dan moet je verder met een gat in de broek en een geschonden dij. Niklas Arndt, één van de mannen waar je kan op rekenen in een sprint. Niklas Arndt, we hebben hem vorig jaar wat beter leren kennen in de... We zijn op 88,5 kilometer van het einde. We hebben de Canarieberg al gehad. Dat is een beetje jammer, want dat is een hele mooie omgeving. De Canarieberg, daar dat muziekbos. Daar hebben we meestal een afspraak met deze wedstrijd. We zijn zelfs al op grondgebied rond. Zijn we zelfs de Kruisberg al over, José?
Ik zou moeten kijken, Michel. Het zal wel, hè. We zijn er inderdaad al voorbij.
Maar dan weet Renaat daar veel meer over. Hè? Renaat, wat denk je?
Ja, we zijn over die Kruisberg en het peloton is daar in 2 grote groepen gebroken. En vooral jongens die dan net teruggekeerd waren na die grote valpartij in de aanloop naar de Canariebergen. Die valpartij met Finney en Ferrer en nog wat andere jongens. Lodewijk ook onder meer, die daar net de rol moest lossen. Wel, die groep is daar het slachtoffer van. En ik denk dat ze het peloton definitief hebben moeten laten rijden. Al is er nog een waterkansje op terugkeren, maar stand houden wordt dan heel moeilijk natuurlijk. Ik denk dat we toch zeker met die scheur op de Kruisberg een groep van een man of 50, 60 kwijtgespeeld zijn. En nu gaat het in vliegende galop naar de volgende helling van de dag. De Côte de Trieux of de Knokteberg.
Nerveus gekoerst van bij de start, Renaat?
Wel, eigenlijk niet. Er was die snelle aanhef, zoals je zei. Maar eens die vlucht vertrokken, ja, dat duurde dan wel even. Een kilometer of 10, 15 voor die 4 dan het ruime sop helemaal konden kiezen. Toen er een grote sanitaire stop werd ingelast in het peloton. En toen waren ze eindelijk weg en kregen ze wat ruimte. Daarna werd het heel, heel rustig in het peloton. En kan je zeggen dat het geschiedenisloos was, deze Kuurne-Brussel-Kuurne. Tot die valpartij in de aanloop naar de Canarieberg. Op een bergafje, op een verraderlijk weggetje. Een bocht naar links en rechts, een chicane, wat modder op de weg, wat water en dat was het gevolg. Een renner of 10, 12.
Il y a l'œuf et en bas, ça va revenir à toute allure. Intérêt d'ailleurs, tout le monde a intérêt sans doute à ce que ce soit le cas. Le grand Burkhardt que l'on découvre à droite devant Van Avermaet. Deuxième, c'est rare de voir à 85 km de Kuurne-Brussel-Kuurne, surtout lorsque l'épreuve a été aussi exigeante physiquement que hier, de voir le premier, le deuxième, je dis le premier parce que Stannard est tout près aussi, mais voir des animateurs comme Van Mark et comme Van Avermaet à l'avant de la course le lendemain. Souvent on lève un peu le pied.
Oui, c'est vrai, mais je pense que ce sont 2 coureurs qui ont une revanche déjà à prendre et qui vont tenter effectivement de la prendre aujourd'hui. On arrive quand même dans une zone stratégique maintenant, il faut être bien placé et on voit que dans le premier peloton, s'il est d'une façon très très compacte, réparti sur toute la largeur de la route, eh bien qu'on essaie quand même de prendre position et de ne pas être surpris. Ça sera beaucoup plus difficile pour le groupe là qui revient, qui est en file indienne. Lui, on roule plus vite pour revenir, mais regardez, il n'y a pas n'importe qui. Paolini bien placé.
Tout le bloc Belkin.
Tout le bloc Belkin, effectivement.
Avec Knees, Eisel. Qui se trouve là, Stannard également. Il y a l'équipe IAM qui fait un gros travail pour revenir, mais on voit que c'est par petits blocs. Hein. Le peloton, le deuxième peloton a explosé dans sa poursuite. Et c'est important de revenir, puisque les coureurs à Russény vont aborder une section de la commune belge du Mont de l'Enclus, située en région wallonne, dans la province de Hainaut, avec la côte du Trieux qui sera la prochaine difficulté avant d'aller chercher le vieux Quarmont dont le sommet est situé à 74 km.
Wedstrijd, Herman Frison nog even op de radio hoort. En die wond er eigenlijk geen doekjes om en zei ja, het was gewoon niet goed genoeg. We gaan er nu geen ruzie over maken. We gaan ervan uit dat de jongens hun best gedaan hebben. Maar wanneer we dan meer en meer renners zouden spreken, ook vanmorgen nog bij jou op het startpodium, dan hoor je toch dat die kou, die wij minder gevoeld hebben uiteraard, omdat we lekker binnen zaten, toch wel meer dan zijn werk gedaan heeft.
Ja, daar kwam nog een element bij en Mark Sergeant heeft me daarop gewezen. Net op het ogenblik dat de renners in jasjes uit.
Wel maar met 1 man.
Brutale tempoverstelling hier dan toch? Daar hebben we plots 2 mannen van BMC.
Ja.
Didier rijdt toch op kop?
Ja, maar daar gaan ze niet naar kijken. Ze gaan gewoon proberen de koers maken.
In Frankrijk is ondertussen de droom klassiek betwist waar Gilbert van start ging. Wel, die is gewonnen door Bardet Delfos, onze landgenoot, werd daar tweede. Gianni Meersman derde. Michael Kreider vierde. Fonseca vijfde. Cheryl zesde. Bakeland zevende. Barguil achtste. Gilbert negende. En Federico tiende. Dat wat de Droom Klassiek betreft. Vachon won gisteren die andere Franse wedstrijd. Waar was het weer? Zuid-Ardèche.
Ja, Bardet gisteren ook al een van de mannen die daar vooraan stonden.
Dus niet kijken naar het feit dat die J daar vooraan zit.
Nee, in dit geval niet. Ik denk dat ze daar gewoon proberen. Ja, die mannen, we hebben er net over die ploeg gesproken van BMC. Niet echt een sprinter bij.
Maar jij zei Lander.
Lander gewoon omdat ik je op dat podium zag staan. En ik dacht, ja, er staan echt wel ferme benen onder. Dus
je,
dat
gebruikt,
zou je moeten...
je gebruikt een ander woord.
Ja, ik zei poten zeker. Hè?
Ja.
Sorry. Maar in ieder geval, dus, het viel mij wel op dat die kerel echt wel een ferm stel kuiten had en ook dijen had. En dan ga je ervan uit dat dat in principe een sprinter zou moeten zijn.
Gaan ze een beetje met de wind spelen. Maar ze gaan natuurlijk naar een af. Landschap waar je zoveel wegen zo vaak tegenkomt, maar dan vanuit een andere hoek. En dan vraag je af van, waar zijn we nu weer?
Ja,
dit is een beetje de afdaling naar de Pater, hè?
Ja, tot je dan op een of andere manier toch een herberg of iets tegenkomt waarvan je zegt, ah ja, hier zijn we.
Ja.
Het hoeft niet altijd een herberg te zijn.
Nee,
hè?
maar ik vind het wel een leuke gedachte dat je je oriënteert op basis van de herbergen.
Ja.
Rick Ottema van Veran Classic is uit de wedstrijd gezet. De Rick had te lang aan een auto gehangen.
Ja, nou, een beetje moeten oefenen. Hè. Ook de ploegleiders hebben dan misschien nog een beetje tijd nodig. Denken ervan, we komen van bij de amateurs.
Tom Boonen est au centre de l'image. Il a Velits notamment avec lui.
Greipel est là.
Ah oui, bien vu, très attentif. Mais peut-être isolé.
Et peut-être isolé, comme l'était Roulans hier,
Oui.
je pense.
C'est quand même étonnant. Ça veut donc dire que Greipel, en termes de conditions, est nettement au-dessus de ses équipiers. Hein.
Ou est plus attentif aussi. Hein.
Oui, oui, sans doute, mais quand on se fait piéger chaque fois, ce n'est peut-être pas alors uniquement que de l'inattention, non? En tout cas, le bloc Belkin est bien là. Et si l'association, comme je le pensais, se met en route, Lefebvre, ou parlons des directeurs sportifs, Wilfried Peters et Nico Verhoeven, là, il va falloir réagir tout de suite derrière. C'est d'ailleurs ce qui se fait. Van den Bertanking, Van Marken, Cialinghi.
Paolini est là aussi.
Boonen qui parle, Van Kersbul qui est à droite. Boonen dans une position axiale, on ne voit que son casque. Et
Come on, Kevin! Come on. Weet niet, niemand die twee. 4 uur. Hey. Hey, ho! Hey! Hey, ho! Hey! Hey, vanavond man. Ja.
Ja, denk je, zouden er een beetje Vals?
Nee, Vals, hè?
Ja.
Van de Greg.
Zitten vandaag.
Ja, ze zijn er.
Ja, 74.
Ja, ze zijn hier al.
Grijpen!
De camera?
Ja, mannetjes.
Hey, come on, hè!
Sky, kan niet zien. Ja. Ja.
Kom on, hè!
Kom on, hè!
Come on, hè! Hey, come on, hè, Holland! Ai. Wow!
Daar aan het wiel zit.
Grijpel zit daar ongeveer in 15e, 20e positie. Van Summeren weer goed mee.
Maar die was gisteren ook al oké. Kilometers op kop. Maar dat was dan wel in groep 3. Dat is een lange beurt. Toch een man waar je een building kunt opzetten, hè, Van den Berg in het voorjaar.
Ja, absoluut. Hetgeen hem eigenlijk vorig jaar had aan begonnen.
Pas op!
Hey, ho!
Pas op! Hey, come on, hè! Hey, come on! Hey, come on! Hup!
Goed, dat koers en het zijn onze weer hoeven.
Ja.
Ja, reis je niet mee dat hij koers in?
Hey, come on!
Hey, ho!
Hey, come on!
Tweede in 0 op het nieuwsblad. En wat een karakter, hè, wat een renner. Man ook om perfect achteruit de wind te zitten. Grootste renner in het peloton.
De jongen van Waregem. In zijn buurt, ook al is hij van Wortegem-Petegem. En Boonen mee in derde positie.
Ja, dat is een andere Boonen dan gisteren.
Dat is ook niet echt logisch dat we hem gisteren niet 1 keer in de vuurlijn zagen.
Ja,
we zien ook Roeland zitten.
Ja, een hele sterke ploeg van Omega Pharma op dit moment. Ik denk dat er al een stuk of 6, 7 weg zijn.
Dat zullen... Te negen dat hij hier een soort van weerwraak nam door hier te komen winnen. Nadat hij er net naast pakte of helemaal geen rol speelde in de omloop in het Nieuwsblad. Ja, dat is toch een verschilletje, hè?
Ja, het zal stress zijn in de volgwagen bij Lotto Belisol. Ze kunnen niet schreeuwen naar de renners toe. Daar kunnen ze hun frustratie niet kwijt.
Kijk nu, hè. Dit is oortjesloos. Geen consignes mogelijk vanuit de volgauto. Mocht het wel het geval zijn, dan zou de volgauto al gezegd hebben inhouden. Daar zijn er twee op komst.
Van.
De koplopers staan op het punt gegrepen te worden door de eerste groep.
Teruggedragen door Fred de Bruin in der tijd en Ivo Molenaars.
We hebben dus naast de squadra van Boonen, van Marke, Lampaard van Topsport Vlaanderen Baloise, Vingerling die nog mee is. Van Summeren zien we zitten.
Here comes it.
Come on, Tom! Help you, come on! Help you out!
Giro delle Fiandre, Ninove, dove arrivava fino a 2 anni fa il Giro delle Fiandre, mentre adesso i corridori stanno affrontando l'ultimo muro in programma, il Nokerenberg, spesso inserito nel percorso del Giro delle Fiandre. Siamo in pratica a una ventina di chilometri dall'ingresso nel circuito finale. Questo è un muro di 350 metri, subito prima di Varegem, dove appunto c'è la conclusione della Dvarsdorp-Vlaanderen. Circuito finale perché, come è sempre stato negli ultimi anni, gli ultimi chilometri sono in questo circuito di 16 chilometri che porta a Kortrijk, poi si passa da Harelbeke, si torna a Kuurne per tornare ad Harelbeke e ritornare per l'ultima volta a Kuurne, complessivamente 16 chilometri, un giro da ripetere per 2 volte, dunque in poche parole ci saranno 2 passaggi sulla linea del traguardo e poi l'arrivo.
Anche il gruppo, che continua ad accumulare leggermente, ma continua a farlo, ritardo nei confronti del gruppettino di testa all'attacco dell'ultima salita di giornata, il Nokerenberg. Mancano poco più di 50 km all'arrivo per la testa della corsa, qualcosa in più per il gruppo. Abbiamo visto particolarmente attivo Matteo Trentin, già chiara la tattica dell'Omega Pharma Quick Step. Sui 5 corridori in testa ci sono Matteo Trentin, Steen Vandenberg e Guillem van Keelsburg che stanno lavorando a fondo. Tom Boonen si sta tenendo invece riposato Nicolas Maes, che dovrà essere colui che nel finale, se questo gruppetto arriverà, lavorerà per il capitano.
E intanto il loro vantaggio di poco, ma è ulteriormente aumentato, perché adesso siamo a 1 minuto e 10 nei confronti del gruppo che abbiamo visto tirato adesso da Bernhard Eisel, l'austriaco del Team Sky, ed eccoci con le immagini tornate sul gruppo di testa. Rivediamo anche in grafica la composizione: Boonen, Van Kersburg, Trentin, Maes, Vandenberg, questi sono i 5 della Omega Pharma, Van Mark, Winans, Hofland sono i 3 della Belkin, Van Summeren, maglia azzurra della Garmin Sharp, e poi Yves Lampert della Top Sport Vlaanderen. Questi sono i 10 uomini al comando. Gran parte del merito per questa azione che si è sviluppata va alla
Ja, natuurlijk dat. Nog een goede 20-25 kilometer en dan met het speculeren beginnen.
En dan proberen mee zijn als er dan een koproep breekt of zo. Hier valpartij van een van de mannen van Belkin.
Dat is Marcus Barry. Ja. Barry Marcus, zo moet ik zeggen.
De sprinter.
Klaas Lodewijk is uit de wedstrijd gestapt. Wat is het dan gebeurd? Wat is er gebeurd? Daar is het gebeurd, opzij. En dan kun je maar beter het gras opzoeken. En dan naar Renat.
Ja, bij Nico Verhoeven. José vraagt, wij draaien. Nico Verhoeven.
Dat zal in orde zijn, hè?
Dan zal het inderdaad heel goed zijn. En dan zou dat wel eens een man kunnen worden die in België voor ons toch nog een klassieker gaat winnen. Samen met eventueel Tom Boonen of Gilbert.
Het veld van SCV. Droom jij niet van een samensmelting van een aantal grote ploegen in jouw Waasland, in Waasmunster?
Ja, we zijn er.
Met een nieuw stadion?
Deze middag met Mark van Landegem, de man, de perschef die je net al aangehaald hebt, over bezig. Ze zouden beter allemaal samenwerken. Maar ja, dat is utopie. Dat is ieder zijn eigen klan, ieder zijn eigen ploegje, ieder zijn eigen sponsors.
Voor de rest hier 1:03. Seconde of 7 achteraf. Onder de minuut zou men nu zelfs zeggen op de wedstrijdradio. 58 seconden. Met Eisel. Mannen die daar al zo vaak gezeten hebben, hè, in een achtervolging.
Ja, van die mannen, die mannen die gaan het wel aankunnen. Eisel en die mannen, maar het zijn vooral die jongeren die moeten meewerken. Wanneer die moeten gaan werken, dan krijg je uiteraard een ander geval. Die vallen rapper stil, die vallen rapper weg, die breken rapper. mannen als Aijel en Jens Stennert normaal gezien, die draaien wel mee tot en met de finishlijn.
Ik zou nu toch wel eens weten wat daar gezegd wordt. Hè? Als Renaat daar in de buurt zit, is het Walter Plankaart?
Ja, het is inderdaad Walter Plankaart.
Ja, wat moet Lampaard dan doen, Renaat?
Eten, drinken en proberen mee zijn en diep in de finale.
Ja, die peddelt nog altijd dapper mee, hoor. We gaan naar Renaat.
Pressure on, but the riders behind, as again, this really, it's almost like a track pursuit. They're holding each other steady, and it's almost like 8 to 10 riders versus 10 riders. Not much at all to pick between the two. And at some point, something's going to have to happen. Either the front group, somebody attacks the front group, and I can't see that happening at the moment. It's certainly in their best interest to stick together and keep riding, or, you know. Or they just get tired behind. But at the moment, it's gone out again by a second to 55 seconds. It's certainly holding steady, and there's not much at all between these two groups.
Riding into a slight headwind here. We're also getting news that there is a slight headwind at the finish as well, which could make any mass sprint, if we are to get there, that bit more interesting. If it comes down to a sprint in this group, then you've got to be looking at Boonen and Hofland, maybe even Matteo Trentin. We shall see.
Of course, Trentin took a great stage from the Tour de France last year from a group of about 15 or 20 riders. So a very, very good turn of speed, Trentin by himself. But one would favour Boonen from this group. But Hofland again, very, 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 very fast. Both riders having victories already this year. Would bet against Boonen though. But of course, sprinting from a small group, completely different than actually sprinting from a big bunch. As you see, the lead still hovering now, 55 seconds. Paolini, the third oldest rider in the race, at 37 years and 44 days swings off, previous winner. Again, a very, very fast finisher himself, but of course, he needs to work at the front as well, obviously looking after the interest of Christoph. But Bernie Eisel now takes his turn at the front, looking increasingly more desperate. Earlier on, he looked a bit relatively composed, but now look at him gritting his teeth there. You can see it's a little bit of headwind. They're certainly not going particularly quick. He's got the vent down on his aero helmet. These new Kask aero helmets that Sky using at the moment have slidable vents, so riders can opt for the cool air to come through by sliding the vent backwards, or, as illustrated there, he's got the vent forwards for mass for the best aerodynamic effect.
Spied and Asje de Zer La Mondiale jersey. Haven't seen them at all today, but they brought Eugenij Hutanovic. He's come closer on more occasions, I think, than he can remember winning this race. It's the eternal second or third here. I think he was second last time, in fact, when Mark Cavendish won it. I'm pretty sure it's right, but whether he was there or thereabouts that year or not, he has so many placings down the year in this race. He loves racing here, but I think he'd love a win. Right on the left-hand side of your picture, you can spy him. He's 2014 his year, but if it is to be his year, this has to come back. The minute, the gap is growing again, and we're just 1 second off that magic minute.
It's crept up by 3 or 4 seconds, and of course, what a 5-man relay team Omega Pharma Quickstep have here. Tom Boonen and Keersbrook, Trentin, Mays and Vandenberg, all working in complete and utter unison, along with the 3 Belkin riders on board, so an extremely strong group. And at the moment, the cards are stacked in their favour. The gap now 1 minute and 1 second.
Sepp Van Moor has been working so hard. In fact, he was one of the great instigators of the move and the first point, just as he was 24 hours ago in the Omloop at Nieuwsblad. He was here as well. He was actually the great organiser of this group. He was the one trying to get everybody in the formation at the start and willing a Megaform quick step on the ride as well and saying, look, it's in both our interests to ride away here.
Definitely, that's the universal hand sign for working, a little rotating hand, or sometimes it's a big call, like a big windmill movement to indicate to riders, let's keep going through. You'll see that from junior racing right the way through to Pro Tour racing. That's the universal sign.
This is the last kilometre, by the way. There's the Flamme Rouge. We're going to have 2 circuits of the final circuit around Kuurne. So with 1 kilometre to go, we'll see the finish line, and then we'll see it for another time. This is the peloton chasing. They're really strong out here. Paulini's been putting in a couple of big turns before he swung off every time the cameras have cut to him. I hope that aero helmet's working.
With 33 kilometres to go, there's still a lot of tarmac to be ridden, and very hard as we're approaching the finish now.
Finish line for the first time. It is the 3rd passage of the finish line that will give us the winner.
Pass through the finish, very long straight, 3 kilometres for a little chicane and a left in the technical section through the centre of Kortrijk, then they head out again, pass over the river near Haalbeck, and it's 5 kilometres to go. But the majority of the circuit, wide, straight, open road, so will favour the bunch behind who could see their foil in front.
As you can see, nog 2 ronden, 2 rounds to go, or 2 circuits to go. 3 hours and 46 minutes, 52 seconds before they arrived after 160 odd kilometres. There's Christian Ney struggling, really gritting his teeth. It's a hard job for him today. Both him, Paulini, Stannard as well, alongside a couple of the Lotto riders who really shared it out, have put some heroic turns in already. And this is the first sight we've had for a while of a few of the IAM riders as well. I think Heinrich Hausler is amongst those.
Yeah, you'd imagine that Heinrich is there if they're going to start massing at the front. Heinrich, obviously, a very good finisher. Who can forget his 2nd place finish in Flanders and Milan-San Remo back in 2010, sorry.
One for the Aussies watching that.
One for the Aussies watching, definitely. But,
he's had such bad luck over the last couple of years, and of course,
he has.
Let's not forget this weekend is such a hard weekend for him. He was in tears yesterday when he was giving what was, I was led to believe, a very glowing and beautiful tribute to his late friend Christophe Godard yesterday to the Belgian television. He would dearly love to get a win to dedicate to the memory of Christophe Godard, who tragically killed in that accident.
It's such a tragedy. I mean, absolutely awful for the team, and you could understand either way. You know, that it could either go one way, it could either make them extremely sad, and it's difficult to get themselves motivated, or it could motivate them the other way. But you can understand either position. As we see, complete disharmony in the chases. Paulini looks over his shoulder, was shouted at by Christian Knees. This is going to break up the momentum of the chasing group. They did take a few seconds back, so as they crossed the finish line, the lead was 57 seconds. So they're going to need to get organised if they're going to make any inroads into what is a very well organised league group at the moment. 54 seconds we have.
Matt, Jay Fisher asked us on Twitter, how close to full gas will the front group be riding?
Well, with 31 kilometres to go, they're going to be riding not at totally at full gas, because they've been away for so long they can't afford to ride in the red. But if you want it on a score of 100%, they're probably riding it at around 80% at the moment, 85%. Going into the final 10 kilometres, they'll be fully aware of this gap. What they'll want to lead, if, for example, the peloton start making big inroads into this lead, which at the moment I can't see that happening, they want to need enough in reserve to lift the pace a little bit more. So they'll have a little bit back in reserve, but of course, a lot of tired legs. They've been relaying on the front now for 30 odd kilometres, but they'll be holding a tiny bit back just so they can make a change of pace should the bunch start making inroads.
That conditional is actually what we need to focus on here, because we saw behind, there's no organisation whatsoever at the front.
Now, lots of tired legs. It looked like Christian Knees or Paulini put in a turn that was too hard, and when he'd been riding on the front, it's very difficult to get back onto the wheel, because essentially you have a bunch, and at the front there was 8 or 9 riders working, and if one rider loses the wheel, the riders that are driving hard up front and basically leading the brunt, if there's a gap, those riders will essentially ride off, and that's why Christian Knees was shouting at Paulini to ease off. And of course, that's only going to be good for this lead group, because obviously there is complete harmony here. They've only got one thing in mind, and that's getting this group to the last few kilometres before they might start attacking each other or setting it up for a sprint finish.
Van Kersbroek rolling through as Matteo Trentin, the Italian, comes on to take the job. Just behind him is Steen van den Berg. It's rolling through in perfect formation.
Yep, the team there, all riding on the drops, all using the aero helmet option, which is the specialised evade helmet, the one that they would use for these sorts of races where it's all about speed. Obviously at the moment they'll be tapping along quite easily, hovering at around 50 kilometres an hour. The bunch doing pretty much the same thing, but of course that's it, they're doing the same, they're not going that much quicker, still holding at 54 seconds as we just dip under 30 kilometres to go. And of course, Rob, when we hit the 20 kilometres to go mark, no more feeding. So the guys now you see dropping back, as we can see one of the Sky riders in the black and blue there, dropping back no doubt to get some water, some gels, maybe a bit of cake, just to fuel themselves for the last few kilometres.
Inside 30 k's to go. 56 seconds. Also Katusha showing the way. Almost a minute, then 0.3 kilometres remain as we go through the town of Lee. 1 minute and 1 second, the gap has grown. Interesting spot in the chasing group. We have a line of Lotto riders and a line of that is certainly punctuated by one rider wearing the Wallonie-Bruxelles kit. There's been a bit of collaboration there and a bit of extra help. Interesting to see that Lotto are one of the sponsors of Wallonie-Bruxelles.
It does happen. It's one of those things that's never really mentioned about in cycle sport, but from time to time it does happen. The Wallonie team, one of the smaller teams, but obviously Lotto now, they've got their, potentially, Rob, they've got their back against the wall and they need to look at other options. And sometimes the other options is to call in favours from some of the smaller teams. This happens in stage races where you need to have guys riding on the front. And clearly here, it shouldn't really be the case. You know, Mark Sargent has got a very, very well drilled and talented group of riders, but clearly there one would question the involvement of that smaller rider at the front, but I would say he's under the péage, perhaps a couple of beers later or a couple of euros to help out and drive at the front.
Interesting to see.
Yeah, and obviously sometimes for the smaller riders it's a bit of a shop window for them as well. If they seem to ride at the front for these bigger teams, you know, calling in a favour, you never know if he gets a couple of performances to back that up later in the year, could be in with a stagiaire or even a contract. And for those of you who don't know, a stagiaire is a period on a team back end of the pro cycling season where an amateur rider or a rider from a small professional team can guest with one of the bigger pro teams to see if he likes the team and if the team likes him.
And here he is. Time for his moment. Shall we get a good look at him, because this is Steen van den Berg, and well, he's the biggest figure just about on a bike I think you will see. Easily spottable from just about everywhere. The huge, rangy, tall figure of Sepp van Mark comes to the front as well. This is the complete composition of the 10-man group. 3 from Belkin, 5 from a Megaformer Quick-Step, with the rider from Topsport Vlaanderen, as well as a Garmin presence in Johan van Summeren.
As you see Hofland there, fully in a full skin suit there, taking a gel, making sure he's got enough fuel on board. Obviously gels, little caffeine gels and little spikes of sugar can make a difference in the last few kilometres. Give you that little bit of a rush of sugar, bit of caffeine to make you nice and alert. Obviously purely legal, these are all products that the guys can take legally that are available in gels, etc. But of course they're going to want to keep well fueled. These guys have been riding and relaying on the front now for quite a long time. They're going to have very, very sore legs and need to keep those fuel stores high.
Once they've made sure they've refueled before these last 20 k's, of course, they've got everything that they need. The gap at a minute, it really is starting to look very good now for this breakaway. If you're not in an Omega Pharma Quick-Step jersey, of course, they have 5 of the 10 men. If you're in the Belkin team, you have Moreno Hofland. If you're one of the other 2 riders, what happens here? When do you start to think about your tactics?
They were thinking about the tactics now. At the moment, they're going to want to just keep riding. There's still a long way to go. And the bunch, if they let up at all, if they knock off a kilometre an hour even, that's when the bunch are going to sniff. There's a disharmony in the front. So at the moment, they're not thinking of the finale. They're just thinking of keeping the tempo high to discourage the bunch and put the pressure on the bunch. As you can see, just by Tom Boonen there, he's on the drops, he's tucking down to get as aerodynamic as possible, and he looks absolutely gracious on a bike. as we see Trentan now, the other Omega Pharma Quick-Step, of course Omega Pharma Quick-Step in the black, white and pale blue. And Van Summeren now with those flowing locks behind that rather unusual POC helmet, quite a distinctive helmet that Garmin are using for this year. Of course, previous Paris-Roubaix winner, well over 6 foot, but again, certainly putting the power through that Cervelo bike very, very effectively indeed.
Well, let's run through the scenarios here. If it comes to a sprint and there's nobody that attacks this group, or if the pace is too high for an attack, then we're obviously looking at Hofland in the skin suit on the right-hand side there, and Tom Boonen on.
They're arguably, on paper, the fastest two sprinters. So unless we see any attacks, and it'll be interesting if we do see attacks from either the Garmin rider or...
Someone's got to have a go, haven't he?
He's got to have a go. He's still working at the front. He still knows that if there's a let-up, he knows that obviously it doesn't look like Garmin have got any strength in numbers at all in this chasing group. I certainly don't think they're Tyler Ferraz. He had a difficulty early on in the race, so he's got to look at options. And of course, he can go alone. He certainly, probably in the last 7 to 8 kilometres, might start attacking. But we shall see. But at the moment, it's in his best interest to keep riding, to keep that gap high. And again, disharmony at the front. People are letting the wheels go. They're getting tired and holding at 1 minute 2. Luca Paolini clearly very, very frustrated with how things are going at the front.
Well, it's interesting because Katusha obviously believe in Alexander Kristoff here. They really do. Otherwise, there would not be such a concerted effort to help out with the chase. Luca Paolini, as the man in charge of this operation, is looking ever more disgusted by the number of times he has to pull off. Interesting to see Andre Greipel, pardon me, very, very comfortable in that group, but he needs his team to do more work as well.
There's no other teams helping. I thought that Francois Lejeune might have helped. Maybe just put one man up there to help bring this gap down, but it's still hovering. It's just dipped under a minute there, but they're just not making enough inroads. I mean, soon we're going to be under 20 kilometres to go. This is going to be absolutely touch and go, but normally at this stage of a race, when you have a breakaway, normally the bunch has almost like the ability to have what we call a second wind. Normally that's when they put numbers at the front, but this bunch is very, very small. It's been whittled down. Obviously, the earlier impetus applied by Belkin and Omega Pharma Quick-Step to only 45 riders maximum there, so there isn't the strength in numbers to come and help. A lot of these guys are going to be pleased just to be there.
In fact, I'd say 30 to 40 riders. It looks very small, that group.
It's very small indeed. So it's dipped under to 58 seconds. They've stolen a couple of seconds back, but not making enough inroads to make a real difference here. 22.5 kilometres to go. This is going to be a very exciting finale. But as you say, in relation to the tactics, I think Omega Pharma Quick-Step are going to want to keep it together. I think if there are attacks from other riders, obviously Boonen has got to go with them, but I have a feeling that Omega Pharma Quick-Step are going to want to keep it together, and Belkin are going to keep it together. I think that Belkin think that Hofland has got a very, very good chance against Boonen.
Well, he's in form. We talked about his win last week at the Vuelta a Andalucía. For those of you who didn't see it, it was on the 4th and final full road stage into Fuengirola on the Costa del Sol. There were plenty of teams involved. Lotto, of course, involved as well. There was the Top Foot Flandern team that really launched the attack in the first place. Belkin riding through in numbers. I think there were 3 or 4 of them crossing the line in the first 5 to 10 riders. They were really in control of the sprint. Hofland, very, very impressive on what was a hot day on that occasion for this time of the year. Here, it's slightly different in terms of the conditions. We've got a fairly firm headwind at the finish. And the great thing, as far as Omega Pharma Quick-Step are concerned, is if you're one of their supporters, you'll be rubbing your hands together, because if Van Summeren attacks, well, you've got the riders to cover it. You look at Van den Berg.
I think that if Van Summeren attacks, or even if Lampert attacks, I don't think Yves Lampert will attack. I think he's just chuffed to be there. He's only 22 years of age, only been a professional. This is only his 2nd year as a pro. A previous winner last year of the Grand Prix van Stad Kiel, and 5th in the Châteauroux Classic. But clearly a very talented rider. But I don't think we'll attack for him. I just think he'll try and want to mix it and maybe finish in the top 5. So I think Omega Pharma Quick-Step will keep the pace extremely. I would say Tom Boonen is going to be confident but a little bit nervous at the same time. Hofland is super fast, super intelligent, won a hatful of races at the back end of last year too, and clearly good form.
Well, the last time Tom Boonen was involved in a sprint on this particular weekend of the season, he lost it out. And can you remember who beat him? It was in the Omloop Het Nieuwsblad 2 years ago. Sepp van Mark.
I remember.
We haven't mentioned him yet.
No,
he's
of course.
there.
Yeah, it's. I didn't watch the finale of that, but I remember seeing the stills at the finish, and all Tom was doing was looking at the ground, looked extremely disconsolate at that loss. Normally, you'd have bet your house that he would have put away Sepp van Mark in a sprint like that, but it wasn't to be.
And of course, that is the only Cobble Classic in Flanders that he has never won. He failed again yesterday. 13 attempts now for the king of Flanders, Tom Boonen.
Tom Boonen, you're never short of a fantastic quote from Tom.
I think he's been reading a few books over the winters, Tom. A few more than you and I, anyway. Last commercial break before we get to the big stuff on British Eurosport. We'll see you in a minute. Approaching the last round, the last ronde. We're almost there. 16 kilometres remain. A big group of 10 riders out in front. 5 of them from a Megaform Quick Step. Yes, Tom Boonen is there, and he could be the man to make history as the first rider to win this on 3 occasions. 3 Belkin riders, Hofland amongst them, Van Mark there as well, as is Vinons, with Van Summeren for Garmin and Yves Lampaert. There goes the bell. The gap is at around a minute still, and it's going to be very, very hard. You need a big, big movement in the peloton behind that still is lacking organisation, Matt, if this is going to come back together.
Last lap, 16 kilometres to go, 4 hours and 7 minutes in the legs. Their legs are going to be absolutely burning. This breakaway had been working like a dream since they broke away on those climbs. About 50 kilometres ago now, Rob. They've been out in front for a long, long time, but something dramatic is going to have to happen, and I can't see it happening. Basically, we've got to see the tempo at the front broken up by either some attacks or just them slowing down, and just because of the pure makeup. In the interest of the sprinters on board this group, that's not going to happen, or a massive change of pace at the front, and if anything, there's a certain lack of cohesion in the peloton behind.
Lack of cohesion behind. No real change in the gap. We'll see if anything happens coming through the finish line for the final time. Johanna Froda hits the front. It's a bit late, you have to feel, from Française de Jeu. Giant Shimano as well. Just whilst our British viewers were away in the break, Giant Shimano, where have they been? They've got so many sprinters. Look at the list of riders they have. Nico Arngusin, Janse van der Rensburg, Luca Medjes, Tom Velers, who's been second here before, Jonas Alstrand. There's been no work done by Giant. It's extremely frustrating for them, and surely for the Lotto team and the big favourite, Andre Greipel as well.
It's still well over a minute. It's interesting to say, I thought Française de Jeu would have helped chase earlier, as Giant Shimano. I don't know whether that instruction has come from the direct sportives. I would sense that the direct sportives have said, okay, the main favourite in this race is Edvard Boasson-Hagen, so let's sky chase it, and of course Andre Greipel's Lotto team. So I think the direct sportives of FDJ and from Giant here on the front in black and white with little blue accents, I think they've left it too late, but I think it was brinkmanship on the part of the direct sportives and thinking, okay, let's leave it down to Lotto and Sky. But that, with 14 kilometres to go, 1:04 is a very big ask.
The gap has gone up. It's the biggest it's been for the last 15 kilometres or so. Yes. Greipel on the left-hand side in the white, and his German national flag is the national champion, of course. A little further up, you can see Arnaud Demar, third wheel here. Johanna Froda contributing. Of course, you can see from his fall yesterday, he's got the big plaster on the right knee. But you get the feeling that it is too little, too late, and I think all the action is going to be up the front, and that's the group we need to be looking at now.
Definitely. I mean, with 14 kilometres to go, the front lead group can sense the finish. They can smell that finish line now. I don't know if finish lines actually do have a scent on them, but they can certainly smell it. It could be the dried fish in the area, but I don't know. They're certainly going to have the bit between the teeth. They're just going to keep on driving, and it looks like they've certainly got the slightly better form. I mean, look at that formation. They're still riding so well as a unit together, whereas behind, even Sky have dropped out of contention in terms of working now. They've looked to FDJ here in the blue on the front now, and Giant to start working. Lotto is still there. They still think they can bring it back, but looking at the time gap now, it's going to be very, very difficult.
Mansur looks tired. I was wondering when was this moment going to arise. Look round there. Oh, that's interesting. First time he's had a little look.
That's one of the things, you know, at this point in a bike race, we're over 4 hours in the saddle, and bearing in mind a lot of these riders are going to have ridden yesterday as well, and that's going to take them a lot out of them. It's all about looking into people's faces, looking into their eyes. It is very difficult, as we see Tom Boonen here on the front, arguably now the favourite for this race, running through on the drops, nice and tucked. Trentan now takes over, breathing out with a tiny little beard. He's going to be thinking of the brown beard jersey today, but perhaps he's going to give that to Tom Boonen. Sepp van Mark now on the front, no gloves. Interesting question on Twitter. Somebody did ask if riders, why do some riders wear gloves and some not? It's purely personal preference.
Van Kersbroek, one of those riders without gloves at the minute. Again, from a personal point of view, you won't want to take a fall without gloves, won't you?
The main reason you wear gloves in a bike race is if you fall. I mean, generally, if you do fall off, the first thing to hit the ground, you put your arms out, and you can take a lot of skin off your hands. Some riders just don't like wearing them, but you do risk taking all the skin off your palms. The thing is, you could take the skin off your palms, would be perfectly okay everywhere else, but you can't hold the handlebars, so it's as simple as that. Your contact points on the bike, your feet, your backside and your hands are vitally important, and that's why guys wear gloves. But again, some opt not to.
This is the group that we increasingly believe now is going to provide us with a winner. Will it be a sprint? Will it be an attack? Surely somebody has to attack. Of course, Omega Pharma Quick-Step are not going to do that. They do not need to do that. Belkin, well, I think they'll be pretty happy with Morena Hoffman as well. Even Sepp van Mark, remember, in the past has been quickish after a long race. Remember, this is still early season. It's an almost 200-kilometre race coming off the back of an epic one yesterday. So don't discount the fact that there might be some tired legs, and it could not be down to a typical on-paper sprint.
Exactly. I mean, we know Marina Hofland has delivered in the past for Belkin last year. He had 5 wins, I think it was in China at the back end of the year, and obviously won a fantastic stage at Ruta del Sol. But this is completely different. He's been riding at the front. You know, he's not been carried to the finish as per normal. When Tom Boonen was winning bunch sprints, he'd be essentially carried to the finish. It's a completely different effort. They're essentially fresh. But they've got racing yesterday in the legs, a cold, hard day, and they've been up front riding. So this is going to be very interesting. It's going to be a mix of who's sprinting the best, but who's the least tired as well. So very, very unusual dynamic. Thrown into the mix a headwind finish, this is going to be extremely difficult, and difficult to call too. But it could be one of the other riders that comes through. If Tom Boonen's not feeling particularly good, they're going to have to look at a plan B with Matteo Trentan as well. So we'll see. But I'd have thought that Trentan will be the last guy to drop Boonen off in the finish, because he's arguably the second quickest out of the Omega Pharma Quick-Step riders here.
Nico Maas as well has good turn of speed. We saw him, I think it was the World Ports Classic last year, where he really showed. And surprised quite a few people with how fast he actually was. Approaching the centre of town again, 12 kilometres as we're on our way back to Kuurne. Remember, going through the cycling heartlands of Kortrijk, Harelbeke. Remember, big races coming up in this very area over the next few weeks.
It's worth talking about as well as the physical side of racing at this kind of distance. It's obviously the mental side now. Hofland knows Omega Pharma Quick-Step are looking at him as arguably the fastest sprinter there, but also Boonen knows that Belkin are going to be looking at him. So they've got the weight of expectation on their shoulder, and it's also how riders cope with the psychological pressure of being a favourite from a small group. The riders now will start to have butterflies, especially Boonen and Hofland being the clear favourites from this group. They'll be having butterflies in their stomach about how they deal with this, and obviously the big spotlight is going to be on Tom Boonen. But at the moment, you know, he's not letting up. It might be that in the next few kilometres we see Boonen sitting on a little bit, but of course they can't let up too much, because that bunch, they're still determined, although the gap now out to 1 minute and 8 seconds with 11.2 kilometres to go.
Still waiting for that first big attack. It's down to the Wallonie-Bruxelles rider, who we never managed to get a really good look at, unfortunately, in terms of his number. Well, his face covered in those big light enhancers, flicks his arm as his side chef will come through. Paulini's still on the far left-hand side. It's not easy at all for these guys. The gap is growing, and that is it now, you have to say.
It's all, I mean, the fact that you've got Alexei, I mean, the greatest of respect to Katusha, the fact you have Alexei Tisaievich on the front, who was in the break earlier on, indicates they're almost riding now just to get to the finish. I can't see them shutting this gap down. I'm never going to say never, but just by virtue of the type of riders that you have on the front, they should be drilling into this lead now. And in fact, the breakaways are actually eking out a couple more seconds as we, the lead now, as we nearly dip under 10 kilometres to go, is 1 minute and 9 seconds. It's certainly, Rob, looking very, very good for this lead breakaway.
Is it revenge time for Omega Pharma Quickstep? They missed out on the Omloop after really lining up the race and having Niki Terpstra pull and pull and pull. Here they are with 5 members of their 8-man team in a 10-man breakaway. They have a gap of 1 minute and 10 seconds with 10 kilometres to go. It will be the breakaways, this to throw away. It should be one of these 10 men to win, but there is competition. Tom Boonen is there, Guillaume van Keuspelk as well, Matteo Trentin, alongside Nico Maas and Stijn van den Berg, and that's just one team. Belkin have 3 men as well. Sepp van Mark, always a man to watch in these sort of races. Martin Wienand is a hard worker. Moreno Hofland is a very, very fast young man indeed. Also with them, Johan van Summen, who you feel has to attack pretty soon if he has anything left in the tank. And of course, Yves Lampaert, will he give it a go? Not too sure. You never know. There is Van Summen on the left in blue and white, just as Tom Boonen, the former world champion, takes over. 2 times winner of this race. There's a whole list of historical winners on too. Boonen has to be the favourite, Matt Stevens, to take this and become a 4-time winner.
Well, you'd say he's the odds-on favourite here. The pressure is certainly on. His riders are certainly been looking after him in the finale. 9.3 kilometres to go, gradually ticking down now, but it's certainly looking like Tom Boonen could do that. Of course, he could be a record winner later this year again. He's already won Paris-Roubaix on 4 occasions, 2012, 2009, 2008 and 2005. An absolute legend. I was chatting to Mark Cavendish a couple of weeks ago, and he said that Tom Boonen is looked upon only second to the King of Belgium. That's how well respected he is in the public eye. Certainly a legend. Obviously, today they started in sunshine, and will he today be a child of the sun?
He certainly said he was last night. Time to prove it, Tom. We shall see. Missed out on what he really wanted yesterday. That was a hard race, though. He said it was shivering. It was far too cold for him, and his body, as you say, was a child of the sun. His body wasn't built for those temperatures, he said.
It certainly wasn't. He did say he was too skinny for yesterday's conditions. I mean, Tom does look very, very lean. I noticed at the training camp earlier in the year, he looked very, very lean, but very relaxed as well. I've never seen him so lean, so clearly in very, very good shape.
Well, it leads us to the question that a few people were asking us before the broadcast today, the British fans anyway, why isn't Mark Cavendish here, the defending champion? You came up with the right answer. I'm sure that Mark could give us the answer himself as well if somebody wants to ask him. But just look around at the team he's in for the Classics. There's no reason to take him to these races. No,
Mark is a previous winner of this race, but, that was when he rode for Team Sky, but he's now moved across to arguably the strongest Classics team there is in the World Tour. And I asked Mark that direct question. I did say, what about your programme early season? And I said, are you looking at maybe going to take a look at Gent-Wevelgem with a parcours that will suit his physical attributes, of course, or even Kuurne-Brussel-Kuurne? But he said, no. He said, why should I? He said, look at the team, and just by that was enough. I mean, he's got his own programme. He's going to focus on obviously looking at multiple stage wins in Grand Tours going forwards. And Mark more than happy with his position in the team. And by this, I mean, look at this. Is a virtuoso team displayed today by both Belkin and Omega Pharma Quickstep. I certainly wouldn't want to be in the Lotto Belisol team meeting with Mark Sargent tonight, though. But here we go. 7.4 kilometres to go. Gap up to 1:11.
It's down to these 10. This is where the drama, the tension and the excitement builds up. Tom Boonen just moving himself to the back of this group alongside Moreno Hofland, who hasn't been contributing for a while now. Is this the time when you just start to think of reserving something in the tank?
without a doubt. Obviously, Belkin now, they're their only option in relation to the sprint, although, you know, given the right conditions, Sepp van Mark is clearly, he's put away Mr. Boonen in the past, as we see in there, a great side profile of Van Mark. But Hoffler now going to be sat on, going to be conserving energy, 7 kilometres to go. The breakaway know they've got a good gap. They still can't take their feet off the gas, but of course, aside from keeping the bunch at bay, they want to keep the tempo high to deter attacks as well.
Well, Frans Maassen might just have been talking to Sepp van Mark about an attack, or at least some sort of tactics, because it really is Belkin who have to make the move here, you feel?
Definitely. I mean, it depends. They'll have a word with Hofland. They would have spoken to him, and it's about communication as well. We can assume on paper, as we see Wilfred Peters talking to Boonen there. He's put on a few pounds since his early pro days, but a very, very experienced campaigner, shouting out.
Well, we were talking about that revenge today, and Wilfred Peters was very, very vocal, as he often is, to be fair. He's excellent. He's an absolute presence for the media.
He certainly is.
Wilfred Peters. And he was saying today, well, it could be a breakaway, or a small group, even a bunch sprint. We have the possibility to put good riders in place for any situation. There's confidence for him.
Yeah, I mean, they've certainly, as I said, this is a remarkable display of team riding, and certainly not what other teams would expect to go so far out. I mean, normally attacks would come over the last couple of climbs, but with 3 climbs to go is when they put the pressure on. And we thought they were just testing the water, but it absolutely detonated the peloton, and I think that's indicative of some very, very tired legs from yesterday as well, racing under very, very cold conditions. But regardless of Tom saying that he struggled yesterday, he's clearly on fire today. He hasn't missed a beat.
First bit of a gap there at the front of this group for quite a while. Just a couple of wheels as Van Summeren and Sepp van Mark just had a little look back. A few looks around. It's going to be interesting now with this gap at 1:12. The next time they're informed of the gap, there might be the first few looks and moments of doubt as everybody looks where each of the other riders is, or at least the 4 entities, I think, with the different teams involved start looking at each other.
Definitely. Well, we're certainly not going to see Yves Lampaert on the front, the 22-year-old. He's going to be looking at snaffling up a top 5 place, because of course with the lead outs from Amiga Pharma Quick Step, those guys will then fall away, and he can end up with a very respectable place, and he's going to be conserving energy just to mop up a nice top 10 spot for Top Sport Flandern. I don't think we'll see Tom Boonen doing too many more turns here.
Five kilometres to go, 1 minute and 12 the gap. Don't think about the chasing group now, it's between 10 men. Yves Lampaert hanging on at the back, happy to be there, you feel. Is he going to surprise us? Johan van Summeren should surely have to make his move soon if he's to have an impact on this race. At the minute, as things stand, we're looking at Tom Boonen, the King of Flanders, up against Moreno Hoffman, the young pretender from the Netherlands, and a winner of a stage at the Ruta del Sol last week. It's a little colder here on the cobbles of Northern Europe.
My seat here, I really couldn't call it. Obviously the favourite's going to be Tom Boonen. Obviously Tom Boonen, resplendent in the Amiga Pharma Quick Step kit. Just to remind you at home, Amiga Pharma Quick Step in blue and black. The Belkin team in the green and black, and Top Sport Flandern at the back here with Yves Lampaert in the white and blue. Garmin Sharp in the pale blue. As we speak, Top Sport now taking it up at the front, pointing out a little hole there on the right-hand side.
Pace still high as well. This is where Van den Berg can really come into it.
Allez,
likes of Van Summeren and Lampaert, both of them here sitting at the back, perhaps surveying the situation. And here we go. This is the first attack, and this is what they were talking about back in the car. Belkin, have a go.
Omega Pharma Quickstep are going to have to bring this back as soon as possible, and it's that man, Stein van der Berg.
Vienot's having a go as Van den Berg tries to pull it back. And this is what we thought might happen. We didn't necessarily think it would just be Belkin, though. But of course, less men in numbers. You can understand why they're having a go. Hofland is there or thereabouts. If it's going to come to a sprint, he's not going to have a lead out. He's just going to get on Bonen's wheel and attempt to surprise them in that fashion.
Exactly. Maybe they've spoken to Hofland and he's not feeling too confident. Maybe his legs are a little bit tired. It's left now down to Italian Matteo Trentin to bring this gap down. It looks like he's brought him to heel, and to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if Sepp van Mark tries something after this, as Trentin is really nailing it now. You can see his teeth, that determination in his face. This is great stuff.
Exactly what we want to see at this time of the year. Spring has arrived. This is where legends are made. 3 kilometers to go. On our way back into Kuurne. First little slowing of pace at the front as they all start to look at each other. It regroups again before Van den Berg takes over. Van Summeren's looking around now.
You can see Van Koosbrink on the back, number 2 in the black and blue of Omega Pharma Quickstep, just keeping a good eye on things. He doesn't want people to go over the top.
Van den Berg here is just going to ride through. Why not?
This is interesting. This could be an option. Who's going to chase? Belkin are going to have to take this up now, and Bonen's on it as well.
That's exactly what's happening, Belkin. And it is Van Mark and Hofland both pulling it back. Van Mark at the front as Lampaert wants a piece of this action. Bonen making sure he's there and on the right wheel. Hofland still in the middle of that group and looking at where he can influence the race. You have to think the only place he can influence the race is in the last 300 meters. For the minute, we're losing our first rider, Matteo Trentin. Not going to be an option, I don't think. It's all going to be for Bonen or even Nico Maas if Bonen isn't feeling good. You get the feeling that the way Big Tomica is acting, though, he's ready and he's up for this.
He certainly is ready, but very interesting how sharp young Yves Lampaert from Topsport Flandern looked. He was very, very agile in getting across that gap, but poor Matteo Trentin just trying to claw it back. They could do with numbers, or they've still got 4 there after that big effort to bring back the gap. He's been punted out of the back. Always frustrating.
Struggling there.
Always frustrating when you're trying to get back on and it's a teammate who's driving it at the front, but that's the way it is. They do have strength in numbers here. Stein van der Berg looking over his shoulder, just keeping that tempo nice and high.
They can afford for this to happen with Van den Berg really pulling on the front. Goodbye to Matteo Trentin. It's been such a strong ride from him. 1.5 kilometers to go now. Wherever you're watching, time to place your bets at home, or if you're on the road, remember, it is not an easy call. A lot of people will say Bonen, yes, but Hofland is quick. We've seen Van Mark sharp as well. There are plenty of options here, and surely somebody else has to attack. Van Mark looking around, assessing the situation as Van den Berg, pardon me, is still in, and it's the last kilometre. Here we go. Omega Pharma Quickstep, and it is all together again. Van Mark looking behind, assessing the state of Moreno Hofland here.
Hofland looking very, very relaxed on the drops there. In a moment they're going to swing left and they will see the finish about 700 meters in front of them. And it's a slight headwind, as we know. Van den Berg takes them into the finishing straight.
Van den Berg then into the finishing straight, and here we go. This is it. This is the end game. Business end of Kuurne-Brussel-Kuurne. It was back after Van Summeren is having a go as we expected, and it's being immediately shut down by the lightning-fast Nico Maas. Lampaert third in the row there. Fourth wheel is Tom Boonen, and they're in the bike lanes. Spectators having to get off the side of the road. Cat and mouse, right to left, but it's the sprint that's going to be open soon. Boonen on the left-hand side as you look at it. Boonen with Hofland just behind on his wheel. Hofland, pardon me, fourth wheel as Boonen is ready to pounce. Van den Berg pulling it on, and here comes Tom Boonen on the left. Boonen launches it. Hofland just behind him. Boonen looking for that third win. Boonen looking to make history, but Hofland's gaining on him. Moreno Hofland is there, and it's close. Boonen celebrates, and it is by a question of millimeters. Tom Boonen, the king of Flanders again. He makes history, and it is a third win for him. How close was that?
Well, I've nearly fallen off my chair there, Rob. What an absolutely spectacular finish that was. Timed to perfection by Tom Boonen. We knew Hofland was the danger, and it was millimetres at the end. Hofland came off the wheel of Boonen, as we see in the slow-mo. He's been congratulated now by his teammates. But what a virtuoso performance by Amiga Pharma Quick-Step, and of course, the King of Belgium himself, Tom Boonen.
It was that exciting, I think, for the first 100 metres. I inadvertently called Moreno Hoffman there, sorry Moreno, but that was an absolutely amazing performance by him. We knew he would be dangerous in the end, and it looked for a second that he was just going to get in front of the man on your screen, Tomek.
It looked like it. I think there was only less than half a wheel of tyre in it at the end. Had the line been just another couple of metres, Hofland would have sneaked it, but here we have the peloton.
And we have a sprint to the final. Here's Andre Greipel. He want to win at least a sprint of sorts. On the right-hand side in the white jersey, he's got a clear lead, Andre Greipel. Challenging behind him is Alexander Kristoff as well in the red. Just behind him is Heinrich Hausler. Problems too as well for Andre Greipel. It's going to be Kristoff to come through and take it well. Not Greipel's day.
No, Heinrich Hausler also up there for I Am. But it's Boonen and Amiga Pharma Quick-Step which are the team of the day. But Belkin as well rode superbly well to set up. Hofland couldn't quite do it, but an extremely respectable performance as he high-fives
Flandrians from other teams as well.
Peloton. Although people want to beat Boonen, they also respect him as well, with those rainbow stripes on his sleeve there, which indicates a previous champion of the world, and today he certainly was the champion of this race, going from a very, very long way out to take his third victory in Kuurne-Brussel-Kuurne. That makes him, Rob, the most winningest Kuurne-Brussel-Kuurne of all time. Obviously, especially on home soil.
Tom Boonen, je zit die sprint te bekijken en dan zie je hoeveel het scheelt. Wat denk je dan?
Ja, dat was meer dan genoeg. Hè. Nee, het was echt een sprint ter stervende zwanen tegen de wind in. Nou, wat is 70 kilometer of zo voorop gereden hebben. En,
Kijk nog eens naar die sprint. Kijk, je ziet hem daar in beeld. Hofland moet eigenlijk van vrij ver komen.
Zit hij niet in mijn wiel?
Ja, ja.
Ah, wel, ja. Ja, maar het was een beetje verwarrend. Ik dacht dat Sepp ging de sprint doen. En toen was het in de finale zo'n beetje een geharenwaar. En Nicolas die trok de sprint aan, of die ging de sprint aantrekken. En toen ging Guillaume rechts met Sepp in het wiel, denk ik. En het was even wat verwarring, maar uiteindelijk ben ik naar het wiel gesprongen en ben ik van iets te ver aangegaan. Ik was van plan om echt maar op 100 meter aan te gaan met die wind op kop. Maar ik ben van iets vroeger aangegaan en gewoon kop in de kast zat op de meter.
Hoe groot was de druk? Want jullie zaten met z'n vijven in een kopgroep van 10. En dan denk je, dit mag niet mislopen.
Ja, het is enorm. Hè. We konden alleen maar verliezen. Hè. En de omstandigheden waren echt niet naar ons hand. Allee, dat lijkt er misschien zo niet naar als je met 5 man vertegenwoordigd bent vooraan. Maar je kunt eigenlijk alleen maar verliezen. Er zaten een paar hier heel sterke puntjes bij. Maarten en Sepp had ik echt verwacht dat die mannen nog een serieuze punch gingen zetten. Maar het parcours niet, maar de wind was echt wel in ons voordeel. Het was enorm zwaar in de finale. We hebben heel hard moeten rijden om die voorsprong te verwerven. En toen dat dan 1 minuut was, hebben ze van achteren nog gekrakt. Maar toen was bij ons het vet ook van de soep. Dus ik denk niet dat er echt nog veel mannen in staat waren om echt proberen weg te rijden tegen die wind in. En ja, het was in de finale een beetje harken, maar we hebben het toch kunnen samenhouden. En ik ben blij dat ik het gehaald heb, want anders was het schande geweest.
De slag op de Quaremont, hoe gepremediteerd was dat? Of is dat tijdens de koers gegroeid?
Nee, helemaal niet. Ik had net daarvoor gezegd tegen Nicolas, als ze op de Kruisberg een beetje waren weggereden, van laat dat zijn, rijd gewoon mee, want ze rijden toch niet door met ons. En iedere keer als wij een ontsnapping of een beetje waren weggereden, was altijd wel een Lotto mee of een Sky. En ze rijden toch niet door met ons. Ik zeg, spaart u eigen voor de sprint en voor de finale. En toen kwamen we op de Quaremont, want het was ervoor wel wat koers geweest. En Stijn trok door. Ik dacht van ja, we zien wel hè. Maar toen we boven kwamen met dat groepje, ik heb eigenlijk eerst gedacht van wacht gewoon op de achtervolgende groep, want we gaan als je kapot rijden en ze gaan terugkomen op de laatste rondes. Maar al bij al met die wind heeft iedereen enorm afgezien en zijn ze van achter voor ons ontploft. Dus dat toont aan hoe sterk dat de ploeg is. En ik ben heel blij dat we het geprobeerd hebben, want zo is het toch nog een heel mooie wedstrijd geworden.
Het verschil tussen gisteren en vandaag was dat de koersomstandigheden. Gisteren gevoelsmatig de temperatuur tegen het vriespunt voor jou met die nattigheid. Vandaag was het droog, graad of 10. Het leek wel een seizoensverschil.
Ja, gisteren was